are Confessional Magazine. I am Taywow, and this is More to the Story, brought to you today by Iris and Bo, whose toner helps keep my laugh lines in check, because you never know what our guests are going to say. Visit irisandbo.com today and use code CONFESSIONAL for 20% off. So much love in this heart of mine. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Confessional Magazine, and I'm here today with the wonderful author Chloe Davis. Thank you for being here today, Chloe.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Taylor.
Of course. So Chloe has written, is it written or wrote? Who really knows? You might. But she wrote The Queen's English, and it's a dictionary for LGBTQIA+, correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And she has spent years working on this, and I just want to learn more about this because it's the kind of book that I've never seen before, and I think you're the first one to actually do this. So can you tell us, like, what is this all about?
Well, absolutely. So the Queen's English, if we can kind of see it here. But yeah, it's the dictionary for LGBTQIA+ lingo and colloquial phrases. And it's very inclusive. I think that's just the off the back, right? We're saying LGBTQIA+, right? And what are those? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and the plus gives the acknowledgement of the spectrum of identities that live within, the human identity, but live within the, gay and queer spectrum, such as non-binary and also gender nonconforming, gender queer, bigender, pansexual, polysexual, but it just basically the plus gets to include all of those identities that are non-heteronormative. But so it's a dictionary that houses over 800 words used to describe the collective gay and queer experience. It talks about identity, it talks about history, it talks about pride. Because a lot of times, we think of pride and we think of, this certain rainbow flag, but truth be told, pride is in one's identity, and that identity sometimes can't be like put in a box, so that's why we celebrate the diverse identities and celebrate also the flags that represent it versus, aromantic or asexual, demigender. There's just so many identities. And so I think that's what makes this dictionary very special, is because it really identifies human identity, and it's in all of its vastness and richness. And no, it hasn't, there have been glossaries, of course, done. And yes, there have been dictionaries done that identify language, but maybe it's focused, right? Maybe it's just gay language, or maybe it's just lesbian language. And even that, it's maybe not intersectional. Maybe it doesn't include Black gay language or Latinx trans language, So the thing about this particular dictionary is that it is very inclusive. And it talks about the experiences of individuals. And, how I got all these terms mostly is because I sat and talked with people. And I've been working on this for over a decade, actually like a decade and a half.
That's amazing to just dedicate so much of your life to this, but that had to have been just such a journey for you as well, because you're learning just as much as you're getting ready to teach everybody else.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a learning journey, and not just about learning other people, it's about learning myself. So I identify as bisexual, and my journey with this dictionary and research and diving in and listening to people's stories just gave me the footing and the agency to also, embrace my identity. Growing up, it's like you were either gay, straight, you know what I mean?
Right.
There was no in between. And so it just showed me that, bisexuality is very valid. It's very real. To share my story with others, for others to share their story with me. But I think it's about just people's voices being heard. So yeah, it was definitely a labor of love, but it was a beautiful journey, because like what you're trying to do, you want to tell people stories. It's more than what is seen, right? And yes, this is a beautiful book, and yes, it houses over 800 terms, but it's more than that. It was definitely the experience of me being able to share people's stories. They, you know, like to really sit down and talk about language and talk about identity and talk about challenges, talk about joy, talk about trauma, you know. So it's kind of all wrapped up in this dictionary and experience.
So how did you find the people that you learned these stories about?
Well, so I'm an artist actually. That's like my first language, my first world. I'm a dancer. So I actually started this dictionary in 2006, and I was in a dance company, Philadelphia. It's a Black dance company, and I was learning language, particularly from the Black gay men that were in the company, and a lot of them were also in the ballroom scene, which is what is so mainstream right now because of Pose and Drag Race, RuPaul's Drag Race, and you know all these other legendary, the Kiki scene. So all of these other documentaries and television shows and reality shows that have come out. But you know, back in 2006, I was learning words like shade, read, you know, fierce, of course, slay, snatched. And these are terms that are so popularly used now, but back then it was still, you know, kind of in a nice concentration of just the culture, the ballroom culture, or those who also kind of are intersectional with that, are which is black gay men, right? Or Black trans women or trans feminine. So I started learning the language there. And, you know, just when you're an artist, you know, we get an opportunity to kind of have the conversations, enjoy the libations. You know, we just get a chance to be free. We are free flowing, and that's a beautiful thing. So a lot of stigmas, a lot of boxes we don't belong in, right? So I think the language just kind of morphed and found its way to other company members. And particularly, I just thought it was so interesting. And I just would always ask questions and ask, like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And a lot of times when they would explain it to me, it would be slang, right? So it's like, it's a lot of times when we define slang, we use slang. So what I was doing is when I would hear it, I would define it in a more like academic way, because I'm a nerd and because I was also just being funny. I was just being funny, you know, I was like pretending like this was the Oxford Dictionary, you know, and because I was giving, in a way, I was like trying to give it validity, because a lot of times and unconsciously, when things are scholarly, when we can validate them, when we actually have a textbook for something, then that gives it validity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the validity didn't exist prior to. So I just randomly was like, oh, there needs to be a dictionary for these words, right? And a friend was like, oh, well, when you write it, it should be the Queen's English. And we joked, you know, I didn't think I was going to really write a dictionary. But what happened was, it was like this domino effect. People continued. When I said I was going to write a dictionary, then people wanted to share with me. That's exactly what happened. Like, they were like, oh, well, do you have this word? And I'm like, ooh, no, what's that? Okay, well, do you have this word? I'm like, ooh, no. And then we'll talk about it. And it was beautiful because we were talking about the language, but we were also talking about the impact of the language. And I always like to say that language shapes culture. So I was talking about the language, but I was talking about the culture, right? And all the many subcultures that exist within this larger gay and queer spectrum. And then friends would introduce me to other friends, and other friends would introduce me to other friends. And you know, I've met people, just total strangers, in like neighborhoods, at like pride events, at, you know, whatever, you know. So people kept connecting me with people. And so then it was like affirming. I'm like, oh wait, this is something, like people want this. And maybe I like stepped away from it for a little while or a year, but someone would always come back and say, are you writing the dictionary? I have a word, I have a new word. Random texts, random calls. And that's how it happened. You know, just people were very open with sharing their favorite terminology, but they were very open with sharing their identity. And that's I'm very honored about that.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing, that now you're able to go on and share that with the world. It's beyond just your two-person conversation now. And that's really cool, because not enough people are informed on the proper things. I mean, I know I'm guilty of it. I'm sure I say the incorrect things all the time, but I want to learn. And so it's nice that you've made this so that people can learn. And there's a tool now that can be used.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's beautiful because we all will go through a process. Like I went through a process, right? I didn't know everything. And, but I think the most important thing is that you have to listen. You have to listen. You have to be like, just because it may not be your identity, you have to still give it the compassion, the respect, and the love if it were yours, right? And I think that's our climate now, especially when it comes to, you know, racial injustice and trying to and white fragility. You know, it's just one of those things. You have to listen. You have to step outside your box, your comfort zone, and see how the world looks through someone else's lenses, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's what I try to do, where you're looking through the lens of non-binary, you're looking through the lens of asexuality, you're looking through the lens of bisexuality, you're looking through the lens of, you know, Black American culture and you know, language that has been appropriated. You're, you know, you're just looking through so many different lenses, and the book is set up to help you. You know, we define, you know, I define the term, you know, it's a dictionary. You're gonna have the part
Yeah.
of speech, you're gonna have the terminology, you're gonna have the definition, but you're also gonna have a usage example, like how the term is actually, or the phrase or the idiom is actually used in that community. And that's the fun part. That's when you feel the vibration and understand the nuances of how that word kind of flows in the environment.
Yeah.
And then you have then there's like a fun synonym. I love doing this. It's like, did you know? You know, and I actually kind of use an emoji because, you know, I'm hip. Like, I try to be hip. So it's like, want more info, think, and then there's the synonym. And the synonyms are really cool. So if you were ever to look at the term, you should also look at the definition, the synonym, and be able to connect it quickly without, you know, looking
And
at the
then
definition.
it connects it in your head.
That's
And
right.
it's just, you organically start using these phrases, which is,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
And then I think what's also powerful is that there are two other elements. There's a did you know, and a did you know just kind of gives more information of the, you know, little known facts, the etymology of the word, how it has evolved over time, because we have to understand that, you know, language evolves, you know,
Mhm.
and how it was used, like, you know, in 20 years ago, it may have evolved in how it's used now, particularly when it comes to like words that have been reappropriated, right? So we have queer and sissy and dyke, faggot. You know, some of these words are definitely still very much derogatory. But then some of these words have been reclaimed by particular members of, you know, the LGBTQI plus community, and they have reaffirmed them as a self-proclamation to say, I identify as this and I give it power, you know? So that's what we mean. But we still have to understand that both variations are valid.
Mhm.
It is still derogatory to some, and it's still self-proclamation for others. But we have to respect that, you know?
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing too is the usage note is that, you know, it tells you where, if possible, I try to do as much research as possible to find who actually coined these words, who originated these words, who created them, or is it just commonly used in this community, right? And I thought that was really important, particularly when it comes to ballroom language, when it comes to the Black gay and queer language, you know, or when it just comes to downright Black American culture, you know, to say like, this has been appropriated and we need to acknowledge. But
Yeah.
also, you know, when it comes to the lesbian community, like how some of the words that they have coined, and, you know, the white gay male community, the words that they've coined. Also, you know, if a word is commonly used, you know, in the trans community, or, you know, gender nonconforming, non-binary communities, or if it was even, you know, pretty much coined in, you know, the non-monogamous communities, the polyamorous communities, right? So I think that's the joy of just celebrating everyone's identity. You know, it's not one-sided. And I think that is, if I can say what sets this aside from anything else, then that will be my argument, is that I strive to be as inclusive as possible.
That's so great. I mean, everybody can really learn from you, especially with the climate
Mm.
of things right now. I have to know though, how do you end a dictionary? Like, how did you know when you were done? Because
Because
you know.
you know why? Because my editor was like, "That's it, Chloe. No more. We're not putting any more. We're not putting any more terms in here. We have to stop. We have to stop. Do you want your book published or not? You know." Yeah, because yeah, it was one of those things. And then I also had to tell myself that I was like, Chloe, like, you gotta stop, you know, because I just kept wanting to include more words, because I would learn more. Someone else would
Yeah.
share something with me, you know, and I was like, oh man, like I just did a talk the other day and I learned about Queer Spawn. And so Collage is an organization that really empower, you know, the queer family dynamic. So, you know, children who have one or two same-sex or queer parents.
Mhm.
And they, some of the collagers have identified as being queer spawn. And that's like a word, it's kind of like a gaby. A gaby is like a child of, you know what I mean?
So
You got,
I used to babysit.
okay, see, you know, gabies, yes.
Yeah, I went back my freshman year of college. I babysat for this wonderful gay couple, and
That's right.
they had a set of twins, and
And they were gabies.
I was babysitting, and they were the
You what?
gabies. Yeah.
Yes. See, look at you. See, you know. Yes. So I mean, so I just know that there's there's beauty because there has to be more additions, right? Because
Mhm.
there's more language that needs to be documented. And then also it was just me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like I can only imagine, you know, how many more terms and idioms that we and expressions we can find when there's like a body of people working to pour into, you know,
Yeah.
this body of work.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's exciting because, you know, it doesn't have to end. There will be
Oh yeah.
more, and
Oh yes.
there'll be a team this time, and you can just keep on learning and keep on growing, and then everybody else gets to learn. So, Chloe, what's your background? Where do you come from?
So I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I was born and raised there. And then right after high school, I kind of flocked to the East Coast. So I went to Hampton University in Virginia, undergrad, and then I went up north to Philadelphia and I went to Temple University for my master's. And
Nice.
and then that's when I also started dancing professionally with Philadanco. So, like I was saying, I'm a um, debut author, but I actually am a performer, a creative. So musical theater is my jam. So
Are you so I mean that's so hard right now with like COVID and everything that it's probably
we're,
been
oh yeah,
difficult, but are
we're, you
things opening
know,
back up?
this is the longest Broadway has been shut down. And it was right in the midst of like a high moment. It was just like so much going on. We're gonna come back, you know, it just depends. We're of course we're coming back.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be you know, June, July of this year. But we are starting to have these like incubators where, you know, with lots of COVID tests, you know, we can get together and we can actually start to create and mound things back together. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm ready to move my body again.
I am so I grew up in New Jersey, actually, in
Okay.
Edison, New Jersey Central. But so we would go into the city all the time for Broadway shows. And I just remember the excitement as a child. And I'm telling you, after the year without theater, I'm going to have that same excitement. The first show I get back, it's going to be Christmas Day.
I think so too. I don't think you're the only one. I think that's going to be everyone, including the performers on stage, including us. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm excited. I'm ready. I
What
miss
show
it.
or what shows have you been in?
So I actually am part of two Broadways that are coming, that were coming.
Yeah.
So one is Paradise Square, and that is actually based on a true story. Back in the late 1800s in New York City, there was this place called Five Points, which is like one of the first slums of America. And it was this place where a, like it was very diverse, you know, a lot of immigrants, also runaway slaves, free slaves were there, but particularly there was the stories about how the Black community and the Irish community kind of connected because of music and culture and identity, and just telling that story, but also historically to what was happening in Five Points in that time. So that's a really great piece. But also for Color Girls is coming.
Is it really?
Yes. Well, we were at the Public, and now we've been announced for Broadway, and so I'm really excited for that. But I am on the creative side of that. I'm not a performer in that one.
Oh, I mean, that's still amazing
Oh
to
yeah,
just have
I'm excited to,
to
but
have
I will
your hands
be
in that at all.
yeah, I'll be making my associate choreographer debut, so I'm excited about that.
Oh my goodness, that's got to be so much fun to even get those people together and come up with this, it's your thought bubble in your head and then you're making this dance come to life for everybody. Same thing that you're doing with your book. It seems like
Yeah.
you're one of those people that you get the thought up there and you make it happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think my favorite thing to do is to storytell. I like to tell stories. I like to, whether they be my own or whether they be others, but I like to empower that, because it's like it's real, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's like someone's story, it's so real, it's so tangible, it's so relatable at times. It's heartwarming, it's heartening. And that's what we love. We love that dynamic, that authenticity.
Mhm.
And so that's what I love to share.
Yeah, just the genuine human connection. And
Mhm.
like I was saying before, it's like life moves so quickly. It's just, you just click on to the next person. But if you would just pause and look around, I think humans get a really, we give ourselves a bad name, but
Mm.
there's more good people out there than
Oh yeah,
we get credit for, I think.
absolutely. I
You
mean,
just have to take the time to listen.
yeah, I mean, I I'm just very much excited, and it's like I'm a bit speechless a little bit. So the book came out on Tuesday, so I think I'm just trying to take it all in. But so many people are sending like pictures and videos, and they're like posing, and I'm just elated. I never imagined that that would happen, and it's just to see the support of my community, but
Yeah.
also people I don't even know. And I just think that's exciting. And I do, I just want it. I want the dictionary to fly. I want it to touch people. I want it to, as it touched me. I feel like I am the testament to the power of it, because I'm able to stand so firmly in who I am and have confidence and agency and encourage, others to really understand and explore the diversity of, you know, identity and sexuality and, expression.
And not to be scared of words. I
Hmm.
think people that aren't in the community or maybe haven't heard a lot of these words,
Hmm.
they get scared because they're not informed,
Right.
or they're uncomfortable and people don't like being uncomfortable. But I
Right.
say, like, get everybody a copy of this book and then we'll chat.
That's what I think. Well, the most important thing is that I wanted to stir conversations, because that's how it was built. It was built through these amazing conversations. A lot of them were absolutely hilarious. Like, I mean, there's just funny. You know what I mean? Like, think about it, like, just messing around and like, what's the best definition, how to define a top, or how can let's really define what shade is. I mean, even though this has been defined already, of course, but how can we do it, in a scholarly way? Because like I said, we are in a world where we have to be scholars to be validated, and so therefore I made sure that we are validated. I did the work.
You got your stamp.
Yeah.
Well, Chloe, I can't wait for more people to get access to your book. So can you tell us where we can find it?
Absolutely. So the book is published by Clarkson Potter, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. So you can always go to Penguin Random House, or it's available at Barnes and Noble. It's available, of course, on Amazon. It's available at Powell and a lot of Target, I think, Target
Yeah.
too, Books a Million, I think Walmart. So there's many places you can go. And of course, you can always also visit my website, www.thequeensenglishus.com. And you can go there, and it actually, if you click buy now, it's going to take you to a page that will have all of the different options you can choose from. But
Oh,
I
that's so
definitely
good.
say, yeah. So, Amazon is quick and easy. I know, we're in COVID right now, so it's easy just to order. But I do want to say to support the local bookstores. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
So, check out your local bookstore and see if they have it. And if they don't, encourage them to order it because, we want it available to everyone, not just, the metropolitan big cities. I want it to be available for everyone.
Yeah. Well, Chloe, I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on this and to just learn more about the community and just humans as a whole. So thank you for sharing your story about your book. And I, again, just can't even wait to see where this goes for you and how many lives you're going to touch through your words and just your power. I don't know if you've been told this before, but you are very powerful. Your presence
Oh,
is, it's just great. You know what I mean? Sometimes
thank
you
you.
speak to people and you can feel the energy of the power
Oh,
behind the person, and you've got
oh,
it. So
wow, that's
I
really affirming.
I
Thank
just
you.
you're really going to help a lot of people and touch a lot of hearts with this book. So
Thank
everybody
you.
needs to check out The Queen's English. Thank you so much, Chloe, for talking to me today.
Thank you. All right. Well, you have a great night.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
So much love in this heart of mine.